Please.
Ready when you're.
Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to this urgent Leader of Council Cabinet Member meeting, 19th of February 2026. It's just after 11 a.m. and we have needed to call this meeting as an urgent item, which will be explained as to why. So we'll just run through the agenda. First of all, Craig, do you have any apologies?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Late items to be introduced by the Chair?
None.
Declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. And item 4 is identification of urgent items to which calling will not apply.
Thank you, Chair. So just to bring everyone's attention to item 5, send an alternative provisional council programme. So this was a decision that was originally taken in November, but due to some increased costings, there's a need urgently to take a new decision to reflect that. So we've been unable to provide normal 5 days notice that we would for a decision. In order to facilitate this meeting, we've briefed the Chair of Executive Scrutiny, Councillor Matthew Holmes, and he has supported taking this item as an urgent leader and is likewise supportive if you're minded to waive the call-in for it. The only request that he has made is that an item go to a future Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee to do a lessons learned around the costings. So it's just a condition of waiving the call-in for this particular item.
Okay, thank you, Craig, and my thanks to the Chair of Executive Scrutiny, Councillor Holmes, for agreeing to waive the call-in. I agree with him that it would be good practice to send that to scrutiny, just to make sure that that we're understanding how those costs have changed. So with that condition in mind, I agree also to waive the call-in. So we'll move straight to the item itself, the key decision, which is Send and Alternative Provision Capital Programme. Councillor Hesselgrave.
This comes before you as Leader of the Council, as time is of the essence, namely that what would be a matter for Cabinet cannot be referred to that body for a decision, as it is vital that, subject to your assent, the Council enters into the contract of work by the 20th of February. This will give us assurance that all works necessary to meet the planning conditions can be completed and the school can open to pupils in September of this year. Officers have worked with the selected contractor so that they are site ready at the point of approval. As you will recall, Cabinet approved the purchase of St James House and associated works required to deliver an operational school from the site in November 2024. More works were required than initially foreseen, and thus in September 2025, Cabinet also approved an uplift to the original budget for the required works. The purchase is complete and St James House is now in the Council's possession. The current approval budget for works is 0.8 million. Following completion of the purchase, the Council was able to undertake a comprehensive feasibility study and complete design works. The finalised design satisfies all elements of the planning conditions and building regulations relating to conversion of the building, alongside bringing the building up to secondary school standards. I should add at this stage that Castle School, St James House, was previously used to decant staff and pupils from St Mary's to that school was razed to the ground following an arson attack. Whilst the building was not entirely ideal as a school setting, the staff and children were safe and warm and able to continue with their education on a temporary basis. There are quite rightly more rigorous demands on the state of a building if it is to become a permanent maintained school governed by legislation, planning conditions and building regulations. In this instance, it includes additional works to bring the building in line with current fire regulations, upgrade ventilation systems and the replacement of all the windows to one elevation of the building, to ensure adequate noise insulation and meet planning conditions. I should add that installing double glazing on that elevation or that floor of the building will reduce the carbon footprint of the building as a whole, since there is up to 70% lower heat loss through double glazing as opposed to single glazing. Having adopted a phased approach to the project, the council has already successfully completed works to the third floor of the building, allowing the phased occupation of children, young people and staff. The costs of this initial stage have been contained within the original approved budget. However, the total cost of completing the works, delivering the remaining phases, has increased to 2.553 million, requiring additional budget approval of 1.753 million. It should be noted that the new school environment within St James House will not only offer a first-class inclusive environment, but it will also provide pupils with a state-of-the-art learning and therapeutic environment in line with all Derby special schools. The works will be funded through the DFE High Needs Capital Allocation provision. The financial implications are outlined in section 7 of this report. St James's House will provide places for up to 100 students, a 60-place increase from the current number of places at Castle School, Newtons Walk. Once it became known by the council that central government through the DFE would provide hypothecated funding to ensure sufficiency of SEND places within the authority, a very meaningful and fruitful consultation with parents of SEND children and the school-aged children themselves was embarked upon, as well as with our schools. As you are aware, we now have 100 young people who act as SEND ambassadors. Their story was about the unsatisfactory condition of their existing school settings, and this was echoed with their parents, who of course want the best for their children, and some of whom sought alternative out-of-city placements with a line of sight on how the state of educational settings can impact on their children's well-being and feeling of self-worth. Your assent to the recommendation will ensure that St James House can accommodate up to 100 secondary age students, a 60-place increase from the current number of places at Castle School. With the SEND School Sufficiency Grant allocated by the DFE of some 29.093 million, and with a balance remaining after previously approved works of 9.06007 million, the proposed increase in funding for the works at St James House of 1.753 million will leave an unused balance of 7.254 million for further projects. Despite the increase in capital allocation set out in the paper, that still very much represents value for money. It is a classic example of the council using devolved capital monies in order to, going forward, reduce revenue expenditure year on year. The education placements generated will be at a significantly lower cost, around 0.028 million, to alternative out-of-authority placements ranging from 0.80 million to 0.120 million, which on average are 0.50 million more expensive per pupil per year. Furthermore, since many of the pupils will live within the city, homeschool transport costs for the authority will be lower. This high-quality secondary-age SEND school will have clear pathways for post-16 provision, with a choice for students between Derby College at post-16, which has an excellent record in SEND provision and outcome for students, and for students wishing to go down the vocational route, Highgate Studios. For all the reasons outlined, I fully support the recommendation, namely to approve an increase to the budget allocated for the works at Castle School from 0.8 million to 2.553 million. The works will be funded through the DFE High Needs Capital Allocation provision, HNPCA, as outlined in section 3.1 of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelgrave. I'll just come over to you, Corey, to ask a few questions. Obviously, it sounds like quite a large increase. Well, it is a large increase. 1.753 million is not a small change. Could you explain to us how much of that additional cost is due to the planning conditions? So it's not the stuff that we hadn't factored in the adaptation of the building. It's more what's been forced on us to have to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So yeah, when we completed the purchase of the building initially, obviously we carried out the standard structural surveys and evaluation, in which we actually delivered a saving to the council at that stage. We reduced the purchase price of the building, but what we were unable to do until we assumed occupation was to do an in-depth feasibility to move this school into a space where it's appropriate for a secondary school, and as Councillor Hazelgrave's outlined, around fire regulations, building regulations, and to bring pedagogy up to current standards. When we consider the increase of 1.753, around 600,000 of that is due to the condition to replace the windows across one elevation of the building. And there's another £600,000 attributed to professional fees, having to re-undertake preliminary through our contractors. And what we've also made sure is that we've increased our level of contingency and risk funding, so that we're not in a position where we have to return to Cabinet, which attributes to another 600,000. So when you take those 4 points into consideration, there's 1.2 of that 1.7 in there. It's my hope that at this point we may be able to return a small fee back to the capital allocation, given that we've provided some contingency.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. And when I was briefed about this urgent leader issue, I did set you a maths challenge, didn't I? So I just wonder if you could talk me through. So I asked you, when we look at the cost of those additional 60 children going out of area, obviously there were some figures that Councillor Hazelgrave gave, but actually they're a bit, 0 point da 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 da, and I just go blank. So comparing the cost of them going out of area and then the cost saving that would be will be made by having them at St James's House. Even with the increase of 1.753 million to the budget, how soon will we actually start to see the cost saving to the council?
Absolutely. So when we do any capital, we want to deliver value for money for the city. It's imperative that we do that. And as Councillor Hazelgrave outlined, so some of the figures, we're looking at between a £50,000 to £90,000 reduction in the cost of those placements. But it's not just about cost. Actually, when we educate children and young people more locally, we know that their educational outcomes are better. They're in their own community, they're with peers in their own city, and that does lead to better educational outcomes. And that also has less of an impact on travel and climate conditions. We forecasted at once full, so based on the provision having 100 children and young people in it, with the average saving, the return on investment is about 3 months.
3 months before we see, like, literally the council.
So if the school was full, there's an increase of 1.754, which is about a quarter of the capacity.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, that's clearly really worth it, even with the increase. But most importantly, the outcomes and the experience for the children is going to be infinitely improved.
Yeah. So we could value engineer this proposition down. We could look to save money essentially, but what we think we've represented here is not only value for money because of the investment figures and what they look like, but also delivering high quality provision, not just for children and young people, but for children and young people in SEND.
Yes.
And they deserve the exact same experiences as all of our young people across the city. And this includes state-of-the-art science labs, IT facilities, an improved outdoor space for them to socialise in, and then also the regulatory elements around fire, building, compartmentation.
Okay, Corey, I know that you've inherited this project, so you haven't been involved since the inception of it, but I know how passionate you are about this subject and supporting our SEND children in the city. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about this project?
No, I don't think so. This is part of a wider programme to really increase our available sufficiency for those young people in the city. I say our starting point of that is it always has to be educational outcomes. I accept that on paper the figures aren't the most palliative, but when we go deeper under that top level, actually we do think we're still representing a value for money argument here to the authority. And as Councillor Hazelgrave pointed out, we're looking to devolve this from a central government devolved grant rather than internal pressures on the council's budget.
Yes, yeah, and obviously that's ongoing for every month, every single month that the children are there. We're saving 90,000.
Sorry, Joe. So it still leaves us with a healthy balance in which we will make sure we yield as much opportunity out of that remaining 7.254 million as well to deliver better places and spaces for our young people.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
If I can just add that, the quality of the building and the provision that the children will experience will make it much more attractive to parents when comparing with other facilities outside the city. So it does make sure we get bums on seats, basically, in terms of uptake.
Thank you. Councillor Smale, did you have any questions?
Just a few questions, yeah. So we're explicitly saying that 1.2 million has arrived from planning conditions, which I believe was made on the 4th of September last year.
So we're saying at least 600,000 is appended to planning conditions.
So 600,000 is appended to planning conditions.
And an additional 600,000 that makes up your 1.2 figure to be able to redraw, redesign the school in line with that, go out to the open market. We've then lost a period of time and construction prices go up week on week at the minute. So we're attributing the other 600,000 to our increasing costs that are as a result of that.
So you'd say it was post-September 2025 when you realised that this project was not going to meet in its envelope of 0.8 million?
So we had the planning conditions at that point, and then we had to undertake what that would then look like for the building. We got the costs last Monday, and we raised the decision with Democratic Services the following day. We were then able to brief the leader that Thursday, and then we're able to call this meeting 4 days later. So we were out to an open market consultation where we didn't know the prices and the implications of that planning process, and we have to give them up to 3 months to be able to come back to us on that.
Okay. Was there not pre-application discussions with planning departments around this then? It seems like to me this is something that you would do before. I feel like we've gone one stage ahead of the other.
No, I can see that, Councillor. I agree. Obviously, as the Chair alluded to, I inherited this project. My understanding is that we took a decision not to enter into a formal pre-application because the site that we purchased had previously been approved under temporary licence to be a school. So there was a decision strategically to use the previous temporary planning application as a substitute for a pre-planning application. Whether that is right or wrong, I'm not in a position to be able to say, but I think it's something that we can explore in the Chair of Exec Scrutiny's recommendation, whereby we fully intend to undertake a lessons learned around this proposal, and we could be able to decipher at that point whether that was a good strategic decision or not.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got for questions now. It does. not against, we absolutely know this needs to go ahead. No one, any councillor would be insane to go against this. I have obviously concerns from a governance point of view how we've got to this situation. And I'd feel more comfortable if, I'm sure the chair of exec scrutiny will pull everyone together, but I think there needs to be a wider deep delving in this.
Yeah, I think
So
that's.
it's going to go to the which scrutiny board? Children and young people.
Would it not go a part of audits as well from CMAP, if I'm being honest with you?
I'm not sure off my head, but
I think regardless of which scrutiny board it would go to, the same people would actually be called in to look at it, wouldn't they? Do you want to say
Yeah, so my understanding is that the recommendation is to go to the relevant boards with S in brackets, and I think that would be for us to be able to have a conversation about where the most appropriate is. I think, yeah, we need to make sure the right people are around the room to be able to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. So obviously the recommendation at 2.1 is to approve the increase to the budget allocated for the works at Castle School from 0.8 million to 2.553 million. The works will be funded through the DFE High Needs Capital Allocation provision as outlined in section 3.1, and I am happy to approve that. And that concludes the meeting.